After hunting on the ground for years, I decided I wanted a tree stand. I just didn't want to carry a tree stand. Hunting from an elevated position grants major benefits. In addition to being harder to see and smell, you gain additional range and shot angles. In the lush Appalachian Mountains, this is a giant benefit, especially when hunting with the limited range of arrows. The problem was traditional tree stands are heavy and bulky. They're pretty singular in purpose, and of course, there's still times where it's appropriate to hunt from the ground. I wanted all the pros, but couldn't justify the cons if I were to add such a heavy item to my system. Still, when you're post hunting and sitting around for endless hours waiting for your quarry to walk in your kill zone, you have a lot of time to think. I decided to start thinking about a solution from the standpoint of my weight constraint. This starting point was key to developing this system specifically. The number I decided upon was a 3-pound maximum. Luckily, I have a bit of a background in mountaineering, and also a lot of experience tinkering with all sorts of oddball equipment built around wilderness survival. While I believe I was uniquely suited for this undertaking, I didn't expect this rabbit hole to be as deep as it was. Many facets of the methods I'm going to show in this video shouldn't be considered safe. Don't attempt anything I'm about to show. In some ways, this system is extremely safe, in fact, much safer than traditional tree stands. But in other ways, depending on what school of thought you subscribe to, it's really not. This system relies on ropes. And when you start loading your body weight onto ropes, you're subjecting yourself to extremely dangerous forces and variables that you really need to fully account for in order to remain safe. A small mistake can lead to a fall, which can easily injure or kill you. While I'm not going to go into extreme detail concerning every component and every reason for each component, this video should serve as a general overview of this system and my techniques. Now, with all that out of the way, here's the system. Basically, there's 5 components: the saddle, the primary rope, the foot aider, the ring of steps, and then the miscellaneous support equipment. This comes in at less than a 3-pound total, and technically even less weight than that was actually added to my pack because a lot of the miscellaneous components were already present. These components are what I'd consider the bare minimum based on my own subjective and probably incorrect safety standards. I wanted this system primarily to be lightweight, but I've also designed this system around being fully able to interface in tandem with all of my other equipment. For example, the harness is a custom Tactisaddle made by John Tucker. I ordered it specifically to be simple and lightweight as possible, and commissioned it to have many of the stock features removed simply to cut weight. This hunting saddle style of harness is ideal for me because I can run it in tandem with my holster, my pack's waist belt, and I've even gone so far as to structure my outer layers to fit those systems as well. So this kit is fully adaptable to basically all situations I might use it for and all the equipment that I carry. I really strove to eliminate all the ways in which these components might interfere with each other. I experimented with several other harnesses and sit drags, rope systems, and climbing components, but the final solution turned out far better than anything else I've seen or used previously, and much simpler at that. I could actually go a bit lighter weight if I desired. I'm confident I could technically do these things with just a single rope, actually. I certainly know enough knots, but it wouldn't be fast or efficient, and it certainly wouldn't be comfortable either. So this system grants what I'd consider the greatest efficiency given all the uses I've developed for it, and it of course fits within my weight constraint. The real goal here was complete synergy across all subsystems and their possible layers. Frankly, synergy is going to be a common theme in this video. My motivation to synergize all systems seamlessly netted a wildly different and much more effective result than any other possible design constraints I could have chosen. I've created, borrowed, modified, and perfected many of the techniques I'll be showcasing here from several different schools of thought concerning climbing and rigging. I do feel that I've achieved that level of synergy, and later in this video you'll see many of the compounding benefits of that achievement. So here's the basic usage and how it replaces the traditional tree stand. There are 2 lines, the foot aider rope and the main rope. They shim up the tree alternately and allow me to ascend a tree, much like a standard climbing tree stand. This is called a two-tether climbing system. So, to demonstrate, basically, once your harness is equipped, you remove the ropes and the steps from your pack. You clip the steps onto your belt, and you take the tag end of your main line and you tie that to your weapon and pack for later when you haul it up the tree. Next, wrap and connect both lines around the tree with the aider sitting underneath the main line. Then, tie into your main line via the 8 plate and fully lock it off. Take your main line and run it through the carabiner holding your steps onto your belt to keep it out of the way while you're climbing. Adjust your foot aider loop to the preferred height and ascend. So, most of the two-tether climbing techniques I've seen others use look like they're performed by geriatrics. This system, when mastered, is actually much faster than traditional climbing methods and exponentially lighter and simpler. It doesn't require safety precautions like additional tethers or a lineman's belt when climbing because you're already connected to the tree. It does take some practice, though. You can gain 3 to 4 feet per revolution, and you can fully set up and reach your hunting height in as little as 2 or 3 minutes. What's nice is the system doesn't have a height maximum like hang on or screw in steps or climbing sticks. It's lighter and faster than a single stick method and the myriad of other aider and ladder setups that people come up with. Not to mention it's multifunctional, but I'll get to that later. Right before you reach your hunting height, you need to set up your ring of steps. This is the platform you're going to stand on while you're hunting. Remove the steps from your belt, wrap the main strap around the tree, and space the steps as preferred. Then tighten the main strap down and lock everything in place via the overcam buckle. If done properly, the steps will be rock solid and can actually handle side pressure as well. This harness is not designed for maximum comfort, so it takes some experience to figure out all the right adjustments to get it comfortable. Though I have come up with some other ways of improving comfort. I have sat in this harness all day before, but it starts to get pretty uncomfortable for me around the 6-hour mark. My personal hunting philosophy is that if you're sitting for more than 4 hours in one spot, it's because you haven't done enough scouting, and you really don't know what the animals are doing. This system is safer than a traditional tree stand in the way that you're always connected to the tree, but there are moments where this factor may be compromised. For example, getting your main tether line around branches requires you to unclip your main line, and if you lose your balance when doing that, you're very much able to fall. The same goes for tether adjustments once you're at your hunting height. This can be mitigated by clever usage of the foot aider as a load-bearing tether, but I'm not going to cover those techniques because I almost never use them and they're complicated to explain. I do keep those techniques in my back pocket though, in case I want to employ them. There are some situations where certain variables put me at a higher risk of falling or injuring myself if I hit the ground, like if the branch is in a weird position or the terrain underneath me is especially rocky or I'm really high up or whatever it is. 9 times out of 10, though, it's generally safer for me to keep things dead simple, just focus on maintaining my balance and clip the carabiner over the branch and move on. Anyways, getting back to the basic method of climbing. Once your steps are set up and you've settled in, your main line now acts as your haul rope, and your foot aider becomes your pack hanger, so there's no need for hooks, lines, pouches, or any other additional gear weight to get set up. Now that your gear is hung, you can police up your excess ropes as shown, and they'll be out of the way. This technique removes the need for any additional equipment. This format also makes the ropes more readily available when it is time to drop back down to the ground. Now that you're set up, you can shoot 360 degrees around the tree, and you can access anything in your pack very easily. Because I hunt with a crossbow, I don't need a bow hanger because I have a sling, and reloading is pretty simple as well. What I love about the saddle system is that I can use the tree as cover to hide behind when game is walking in. With the crossbow, you also have the added advantage of not needing to worry about getting busted on the draw versus a vertical bow. Saddle hunting with a crossbow is easy and effective, and this system nets all the advantages without any of the disadvantages that come from carrying a bunch of specialized hunting gear for an overall lighter package than anything currently on the market. When it is finally time to climb down, you don't. Just rappel. Just remember before you rappel down to make sure that your retrieval line is connected to the carabiner on your main line so you can get your rope back when you're back on the ground. Some folks choose to lower their pack and their bow to the ground first before rappelling, but I've set my gear up so that there's no interference at all and I can just wear it down. That's a lot simpler for me. I use a specialty microwave plate which has a small cleat on it for different friction configurations with thinner ropes, but 8 plates all function a similar fashion. On your way down, stop at the level of your tree steps, lock the 8 plate off, remove the tree steps, unlock the 8 plate, and then lower yourself safely the rest of the way to the ground. So that's the basic system. It's lighter and faster than anything else, and it's basically just some carabiners and knots. You can ascend or descend as fast as you want, or you can go slow and be dead silent. The system isn't limited. It's not really all that expensive either. Now, I spent a premium on my harness system and some cool lightweight carabiners, but you don't have to. My first iteration was with a standard rock climbing harness and a sit drag. Dollar for dollar, even with me purchasing premium components and buying a custom harness, this is still cheaper than mid-range traditional tree stands. So a quick side note, I'm a bit anal about repeatability. The way I store my ropes is also perfectly consistent with its placement on my pack. I think that's really important because it makes it harder to lose things or screw things up. It makes it easier and faster to do things when you're tired, or doing this at night or something, which is a pretty common occurrence. So with the basics out of the way, I can move on to the more interesting aspects of this system. So as far as longevity is concerned, I've always been obsessed with simplicity and sustainability. And what's great about this system is that it's naturally a bit redundant. For example, the first 6 feet of the primary tether takes the majority of the wear. And when that portion of the rope wears out, I can simply tie a scaffolding knot and connect my carabiner to the other side and effectively double the longevity of the system. The climbing technique that you just saw can also be reversed, meaning I don't technically need to rappel. So by shortening the system, I'm only reducing the secondary abilities of this system. The type of rope that I selected to do this is a static rope with inner strands similar to paracord. So if I need to cannibalize a portion of that rope or utilize it for some reason, I can still maintain the primary function. The carabiners and the 8-plate are pretty universal, so I can use a wide variety of ropes as a replacement if needed. Some of these things I'm about to show you are kind of niche, and some of them I use quite frequently. I just want to give you an impression of the potential value of this system as a whole. Outside of just hunting, climbing trees alone is a pretty special ability. The scouting potential is nuts. When you're going through thick forests and you can't see anything, even with an experienced eye, it's hard to get a good overview of how a piece of ground is being used. One might scout some clues on the ground, but they may lack the greater context of what those clues mean and what to do with that information. Imagine this. You're slowly walking through some extremely thick brush and you run into a tree. Normally, that'd just be another obstacle. But with this system, it's now a pathway. And that pathway leads to greater perspective, which can allow you to make better decisions on what to do with that particular piece of ground. 30 or 40 feet up above the underbrush, you can usually see further, and now all the clues you've scouted on the ground can be put into their proper context. That's pretty huge right there, and it's a major time and energy saver when scouting. On a simpler level, being able to climb trees also helps with other things. As a bow hunter, I've lost a lot of arrows up in trees, and this system has all but eliminated that problem. Another common use case revolves around general movement in mountainous terrain. One of the best things about having a full length of rope instead of just a short tether is that you can rappel. When moving in the mountains, this adds a degree of safety and a good deal of speed when dropping in elevation. This gives you uncommon access to routes that would be considered dangerous by most people. Beyond just descending in elevation, you can obviously gain elevation. For the first couple of years, I didn't have more than 2 uses for my ring of steps, but last year I thought up a clever method of gaining a new usage for them. A grappling hook. I've played with grappling hooks a bit, but always found that they weren't worth the wait given their niche use cases. Now though, by carving a simple shape out of wood, I have access to a grappling hook for 0 additional weight, and only when I want or need it. That's a potent technique in my book. What I mostly use it for is short-range grappling when climbing steep and rocky terrain. I can of course connect it to my main line, but I find that my foot aider is generally all I'd need, and it also gives me a movable hand or foothold. This supplemental piece of kit makes climbing mountainous terrain, especially in bad conditions, a breeze. It's like having a 10-foot long arm to grab that perfect branch or sapling that's just out of reach. This really makes a lot of sense in wet conditions. Not only is everything more slippery, but I'm also usually wearing a poncho. Rocks are abrasive, and slipping while climbing could easily tear a hole in my rain kit. In this way, one piece of equipment protects another, and the system as a whole benefits from the synergy. Now, one might wonder why I would care to have the ability to travel over mountains almost as the crow flies, but it makes a lot of sense from a hunting standpoint. Because when hunting, depending on the conditions and the wind, success is often determined by your angle of approach. Being able to conquer any terrain allows you to utilize more spots under more adverse conditions, and overall gives you a higher probability of success when properly employed. If you need to drop down or climb up into, let's say, a bench, in a manner that lets you play the wind or beat the thermals, then you can set up in a
Good morning.
bulletproof spot that prevents game from busting you. The more variables you can eliminate, the higher chances you have of being successful. The more capabilities you gain, the better you can adapt to the needs of whatever situation you find yourself in. If you really think about it, the challenges posed by difficult topography can become an ally if you can utilize it and your prey cannot. This minimalistic approach and equipment helps grant that advantage without penalty. Another great use case is lifting things. The carabiner and rescue plate of this system double as a low friction surface for ropes. This means I can rig up a rudimentary block and tackle system on the fly. This has tons of potential in the applications when it comes to lifting and moving things that would normally just be too heavy for me or anyone that I'm with. This additional mechanical advantage adds a degree of scalability to my systems and techniques. It's literally a force multiplier. So beyond secondary use cases, I also do a lot of experimenting with this gear. This system isn't just limited to hunting. I like to push the limit of how much I can adapt my supplemental systems as well, and this in turn helps me understand where those systems conflict with each other. The shown example was a fun one to play with, and one might be able to see some benefit for this sort of application. A lot was learned from this experiment, and insights to improvements can be extrapolated and used when contemplating other future endeavors. Being able to blend these individual elements together and push the envelope of what most people would consider practical is, in my opinion, what sets someone apart from his peers and gives them a competitive edge. This is a key practice for improving one's adaptability. So, with the grappling hook example, I showed how a little simple bushcraft can be applied to an existing component to create an uncommon yet very useful capability. How about scaling that up? Take some more advanced bushcraft techniques, add the saddle system, which grants the vertical element, and utilize the lifting and rigging capabilities of the miscellaneous components, and you're able to, with all those things in combination, create some potent capabilities. This harmonious combination of elements to produce an outcome greater than the sum of the individual components is quite literally the textbook definition of synergy. Another interesting example is this saddle system and its tandem uses with my sleep system. I prefer a hammock, and I think these two systems complement each other nicely. Of course, in this use case, there are still limitations, and it isn't a daily occurrence, but there are some serious potential capabilities, and having more options for no additional weight never hurts. This saddle kit adds a whole new dimension of possibilities. Consider, if you have access to the vertical plane, how much might that increase the usable acreage in a forest? Who wouldn't want an uncommon degree of access to these harder-to-reach places? So, in conclusion, that's a whole lot of capability packed into less than 3 pounds of kit. And these certainly aren't all the different uses I've come up with. Like I said, all I can do is give you an impression and try to keep this presentation concise. In the survival world, it's impossible to know exactly what's going to happen, not to mention when and how. It's all too easy to get caught up contemplating endless scenarios. But if for no additional cost or weight, you can, through expertise, gain additional capabilities, even advanced capabilities, it's generally going to be beneficial to do so, and it really improves your odds at adapting. This kit has become foundational to me, and it's completely changed my perspective about mountain survival. It's a force multiplier, and I have yet to see anything quite like it anywhere else. So, if you think this stuff is kind of cool, consider subscribing and sharing the video. I'm kind of sick of seeing people brag about how lightweight their system is, as many of their individual components outweigh my entire system. I'd like to see more of this stuff out there. I'm putting this out there for free, mainly to garner useful feedback. So if you're into this stuff and you know a better and lighter way of doing this without compromising capability, please let me know. At the end of the day, I'm an eternal student, and I only strive to improve. Hopefully this video results in that. If not, I hope it at least inspires some people to think outside the box.